The abandoned suitcase at the train station began to shake. When the police opened it, everyone was stunned. Inside wasn't a bomb. It was a newborn baby, still attached to her umbilical cord, barely clinging to life. And the one who saved her wasn't a doctor, not a hero, but a German shepherd. He barked nonstop while the entire station ignored the danger. His relentless determination awakened the conscience of a policewoman. But when the truth about the baby's mother was revealed, this story didn't just move an entire nation to tears. It changed the fate of 3 lives forever. At a large train station, a bustling crowd moved hurriedly, blending into the busy rhythm of daily life. Each person was absorbed in their own plans. Morning sunlight filtered through the massive glass dome above, casting shimmering rays onto the ground. Mixing with the shadows of passing travelers, the echo of footsteps, loudspeaker announcements, and the clatter of rolling suitcases created a vibrant morning symphony. In a corner of the station stood an older policewoman named Helen, her gray-streaked hair neatly tied back. Her face was stern, yet her eyes radiated kindness and calm. Helen had served over 30 years in the police force, witnessing all sorts of situations, but she always carried a deep sense of duty and compassion. Beside her was Rex, a German Shepherd service dog with a strong build, alert eyes, and a keen sense of awareness. Trained in explosives and contraband detection, Rex had worked alongside Helen for nearly a decade. Their bond was one of true companionship. This morning began like any other. The two patrolled the station to ensure safety for travelers. Helen glanced at her watch, thinking longingly of the hot cup of coffee waiting for her after shift. But at that moment, Rex abruptly stopped. His ears perked up, eyes locked onto a large suitcase placed unusually on a nearby bench. The suitcase looked suspiciously deliberate, placed too neatly, with a large scratch on one corner that made it even more unsettling. Rex let out a sharp, clear bark, grabbing the attention of passers-by. Helen immediately turned, recognizing the unusual alert in Rex's behavior. "What is it, Rex?" she whispered, a flicker of unease rising in her chest. Rex continued barking, stepping firmly toward the suitcase with unshakable resolve. His posture tensed, eyes locked, as if preparing to face an unseen threat. Helen reached for her radio and called for backup. "We have a suspicious suitcase in the central area. Request immediate support for inspection." While waiting, Helen stood her ground, eyes fixed on the suitcase. Rex remained in position, barking insistently, heightening the tension in the air. Commuters began to slow, turning to see what was happening. Helen knelt and gently patted Rex's back. "Good job, Rex. Stay calm. We'll figure out what's going on." The entire station seemed to pause. All eyes turned toward the mysterious suitcase, no longer just a forgotten item, but something that perhaps only Rex could sense was far more serious. Just minutes later, the security response team arrived promptly. Officers quickly cordoned off the area, suspecting that the suitcase might contain explosives or hazardous materials. All eyes were now fixed on the lone suitcase sitting quietly on the bench, its worn appearance and deep corner scratch adding to its suspicious nature. Technicians immediately accessed the surveillance system, pulling footage onto a large screen in the station's operations room. The atmosphere grew heavy as images from earlier in the day began to appear. Every officer watched in focused silence, waiting for the slightest clue. Outside, the intercom continued announcing train departures, mingling with the footsteps of commuters and amplifying the mounting tension. Roughly 4 hours earlier, the camera had captured a woman wearing a traditional Muslim headscarf. She appeared hesitant, her eyes scanning cautiously as if fearing someone might follow her. In one hand, she clutched a phone, her fingers trembling as she rapidly tapped at the screen. Her expression grew increasingly anxious. She brought the phone to her ear, speaking to someone, her face full of fear, as though she were being forced into something against her will. After the call ended, the woman sat down beside the suitcase. She lowered her head, clasping her hands tightly in front of her. Her face clearly showed signs of distress, fear, and a deep, heartbreaking sadness. The camera zoomed in, revealing every micro-expression, her eyes flicking toward the suitcase, her lips moving slightly as if murmuring to herself. Then, as if unable to contain the pain any longer, she quickly wiped away tears streaming down her face. For a moment, she looked back at the suitcase with sorrow and regret, and then she stood up and hurriedly walked away. Inside the control room, the silence was suffocating. A few officers exchanged murmurs, some expressing doubt, others unsure how to proceed. Helen furrowed her brows, anxiety tightening her chest. Memories of past cases rushed back to her, each one heavy with consequences. Suddenly she felt a tug at her leg. Rex had nudged her gently, emitting a soft whine, not out of fear, but as if trying to express urgency. He remained firmly at her side, ears alert, gaze unwavering toward the suitcase. What could be inside that case that caused such fear in that woman? Why did she cry before leaving it behind? Helen took a deep breath, reaching down to soothe Rex. Her heart pounded with tension, but her mind was made up. She had to be ready for whatever was about to come. After a tense round of discussion, the security team made a critical decision. They called in the bomb squad and anti-terrorism unit. All signs pointed to the suitcase being a possible explosive device or containing dangerous materials. The atmosphere thickened with fear. Whispered speculations buzzed through the crowd. Curious commuters stood at a distance, peering over shoulders, whispering, eyes wide with anxiety. Some clutched their belongings tightly, others quietly edged away. The station, once filled with the clamor of travel, now held its breath. But Rex, the German shepherd, was acting strangely. He wasn't behaving as he normally would when near explosives. Instead of keeping his distance, he circled the suitcase again and again, barking fiercely and sharply, as though pleading for someone to understand. Each bark echoed through the vast terminal like an alarm. There was something urgent, something almost desperate in his voice, as though the suitcase wasn't dangerous, but vital. Then Rex stopped abruptly. He turned, locked eyes with Helen, and rushed toward her. He pressed his head against her leg, then jumped up, placing both front paws on her waist. His eyes were wide, intense, shining with the clarity of a message only she could understand. Helen stared into Rex's eyes, her heart gripped by a terrible internal war. A memory crashed into her. One from years ago when Rex had stopped her from walking into a building that, moments later, was found rigged with explosives. That day he saved her life, and since then, he had never been wrong. And now he was trying to tell her something, not of danger, but of life. Outside the restricted zone, the station loudspeakers kept announcing train schedules. Their robotic calm clashed with the rapid footsteps of the bomb squad approaching. Red lights flickered from warning systems, reflecting off pale, tense faces. Helen could feel sweat dripping down her temple. Her hands trembled slightly. Her eyes darted between the suitcase and Rex. All around her were passengers, her team, lives in her hands. Protocol dictated caution. Logic demanded restraint. But everything in her heart and everything in Rex screamed otherwise. She looked once more into Rex's eyes. There was no fear, no hesitation, only trust and a silent plea. Believe me. And in that moment, Helen made her decision. She inhaled deeply, her trembling turning into stillness. Eyes firm, voice calm. She would trust Rex and herself. After all these years, what was the point of training, of experience, of instinct, if not for a moment like this? Helen took one final breath and stepped forward. Ignoring the calls of warning from nearby officers, she began walking slowly toward the suitcase. Each step felt heavier than the last, like her boots were made of lead. Rex followed closely beside her, eyes locked on the case, body alert but steady. The entire station fell into an eerie silence. Dozens of eyes watched, frozen in place. Even the chatter from curious onlookers had faded. People forgot to blink, forgot to breathe. Helen stopped just a few feet from the suitcase, walking in a careful arc around it, scanning every inch. Then suddenly, the suitcase moved, a faint tremble, a subtle twitch, like something or someone inside was struggling to get out. Helen froze. Her pulse surged, a chill ran down her spine. She crouched low and leaned in, just close enough to listen. She shut her eyes, blocked out the world, and strained to hear. And there it was. A sound, a tiny, trembling, heart-wrenching sound. A baby, crying. "Oh my God!" Helen gasped, her eyes flying open in horror. She jumped to her feet and turned to shout, "Get help! There's a baby inside. We need to open it, now!" Chaos erupted, the crowd gasped. Security personnel rushed forward. Technicians scrambled to break the locks on the suitcase, hands moving quickly but carefully. All eyes locked onto the moment, all breaths held. With a heavy click, the suitcase popped open. But what they found inside sent another wave of shock through everyone. A tightly sealed box, almost like a shipping container. One officer carefully pulled it out and set it on the ground. Tools were passed hand to hand. No one said a word. When the second lid finally opened, time stopped. Inside lay a newborn baby, fragile, trembling, wrapped in thin cloth with the umbilical cord still attached and bleeding. The baby's skin was turning blue, her tiny limbs barely moved. Helen's hands shook as she ripped off her coat and wrapped it around the infant. Her eyes welled with tears, her throat tightened, but she held the baby close, whispering through sobs. "You're safe now, you're safe." Rex sat down beside her, calm and silent now, watching the baby as if guarding her with his very soul. "Call an ambulance, get medical attention now," Helen yelled. Medics rushed in, gently taking the baby, beginning emergency aid. Around them, strangers cried. Some clasped their hands in prayer. Others began to clap, a slow, stunned applause that rippled like a wave through the crowd. They had just witnessed a miracle. Paramedics stormed in like a wave, working swiftly and carefully. One wrapped the baby in a heated blanket, another placed an oxygen tube under her nose, checking her vitals with practiced urgency. A young nurse, someone who'd seen many emergencies, froze for a brief moment, eyes wide, lips trembling. "Dear God, who would do something like this?" she whispered. Just then, something incredible happened. The baby's hands, so small, so weak, twitched. Her fingers curled slightly, as if trying to reach for someone, anyone, maybe the warmth that had just embraced her. It was a fragile movement, but in that moment, it ignited hope in every heart in the room. Without wasting another second, the medics placed the baby onto a stretcher and rolled her out. Helen ran alongside them, not hesitating for a moment. Rex leapt into the ambulance before anyone could stop him, planting himself firmly beside the stretcher. The siren blared. The ambulance tore through city streets, racing toward the hospital. Inside the back of the vehicle, Helen sat silently, eyes locked on the newborn. Her hands gripped the side of the stretcher. She whispered under her breath, "I should have opened it sooner. I should have listened to you earlier, Rex." Rex paced anxiously in the cramped space, sniffing the baby, then returning to Helen, his tail low, ears pinned back. He was worried, and she knew it. They both were. The steady beep of the monitor was the only sound holding them together. Then, they arrived. Hospital staff moved like lightning, guiding the stretcher through white hallways under fluorescent lights. Helen and Rex were stopped at the emergency room doors. The baby was rushed inside. Helen collapsed onto a bench, burying her face into her hands. Rex lay at her feet, still and silent, but his eyes glued to the door. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time no longer existed. Then, Rex nudged Helen's leg. She looked up. A green light above the emergency room door had turned on. The red light, the one that meant danger, was gone. The door creaked open. A doctor appeared, coat stained with sweat, eyes tired but gleaming. He scanned the hallway, found Helen, and gave a slow, grateful nod. "She made it," he said. "You brought her just in time. A few more minutes and we wouldn't have had a chance." Helen didn't hear the rest. Her knees buckled. She sank to the floor, sobbing. Tears of release, of relief, of something too big for words. She wrapped her arms around Rex. He whined softly and jumped up, tail wagging for the first time all day. He knew. The baby was going to live. News spread fast. The video, captured by a bystander at the station, showed Rex barking nonstop at the suitcase. The moment Helen stepped forward, the panicked shout, the frantic rush to open the locks. It exploded across the internet. Millions watched in awe. Hashtags lit up like wildfire. Dog hero, #Valley baby, #miracle at the station. Not all heroes wear capes, one person wrote. Some wear fur and carry a badge on their collar. "She's just a dog," another tweet read. "She saved a life. What did you do today?" But even as the world applauded, the local authorities quietly launched an investigation. They had one question. Who had left a newborn baby inside a suitcase at a public train station? Using the surveillance footage from the station and biometric tracing, they eventually identified the woman seen in the security video, the one with the headscarf, the nervous phone call, the tearful departure. She was a young Muslim immigrant, living alone in a rundown apartment on the outskirts of the city. She didn't resist when they found her. She simply wept and said, "She's my baby." During the questioning, her voice barely rose above a whisper. She confessed, the child was born out of wedlock, a grave offense in her strict religious community. The shame, the fear, the threats, they became too much. She believed if her community found out, both she and the baby would suffer. "I didn't want her to die," she said, sobbing. "I left her where someone could find her. I didn't know what else to do." The court ruled fairly. Abandoning a child was still a crime, but so was condemning a mother who had no one and nowhere to turn. She received a suspended sentence and was placed in a rehabilitation program offering therapy and support, not punishment. Society had failed her too. The child, a fragile little soul once trapped in silence, had survived. No relatives came forward. No one claimed her. But someone already had. Helen, the officer who had rescued her, who had fought for her, who had stayed by her side through every uncertain heartbeat, filed for adoption. She didn't do it for praise or for headlines. She did it because it was right. Because after decades of serving the law, this was the most human thing she'd ever done. When asked why, "Ben Bellam, only one," Helen gave a quiet smile. "I may not have brought her into this world, but I can be the place where her world begins again." She named the baby Amira, an Arabic name meaning princess, because from now on, no matter where she came from, she would live with dignity, safety, and love. Time passed. In a quiet house by the river, there were now 3 heartbeats. One older woman who had spent a lifetime protecting strangers. One faithful dog who had sensed life when others feared death. And one tiny girl who had been given a second chance before she could even ask for one. Rex never left Amira's side. He lay by her crib every night, ears alert, heart calm. Helen would often stand by the doorway, watching them both, her heart fuller than she ever thought possible at her age. One crisp autumn evening, sunlight spilled into the nursery. Amira slept peacefully in Helen's arms. Rex curled at their feet, tail slowly tapping the floor. The wind whispered through the open window, carrying peace and promise. Helen kissed the baby's forehead and whispered softly as if into the future. "One day you might ask me why you have no baby pictures. I won't tell you about the suitcase. I'll tell you that you were born from a miracle, from a day who refused to give up, from the kindness of strangers, and from something we call a heart that listens." And far beyond that quiet home, the story of Amira lived on. Communities once closed off began to talk. Support groups for young mothers formed. Outreach programs shared the story in classrooms, in churches, mosques, and shelters. The world had learned something that day. Sometimes the smallest cry from the smallest voice can awaken an entire society. And sometimes the most powerful stories begin inside a forgotten suitcase.